What's going on, guys? My name is Arrow, and in today's video, we are talking about my second build of the league, Cast on Crit Hexblast Pathfinder. This build was quite a journey for me. I have never played bow cast on crit before, and PoE was not updated with any of the new gems, many of which I was using. This led to a lot of iteration, a lot of challenges, and a bit of frustration. I definitely don't recommend going blind into a cast on crit build. My goal was to make a somewhat all-arounder that could kill the bosses, do invitations for me, and be a pretty good mapper. I didn't want to spend too much currency because usually for my second build of the league, I don't like to break the bank, I like to make money. This build in total costs somewhere in the realm of 15 to 20 divines, but of course prices change, prices have changed since I bought them, so don't really put too much stock into that. At the end of the day, I don't think I would recommend this build as is. Although it works, it's not quite up to my standard. And ultimately, I found that I just didn't really enjoy the bow cast on crit playstyle. I don't really do much cast on crit, and the bow version requires a little bit of aiming, which I just didn't find that I enjoyed. As it turns out, CoC is not for me. That's too on the nose. So this build ends up doing about 8 million damage. It's triggering a massive hex blast 10 times per second and makes use of a bunch of new skill gems. So let's jump in. We'll talk about the items, we'll talk about the gems and some of the interactions. Maybe you guys take a look at this and find some improvements and you can make this build better for yourself, as I do think there still is a lot of room for improvement. I was ready to move on. I already have a couple of great ideas for new builds. So we're gonna get this video out and start our new build on stream today. So let's dive in. Okay, so here we have Arrow Flaskin.
Carol Baskin.
This is a level 93 Pathfinder. Let's start with the bow. This is fairly easy to craft. You basically just spam essences until you hit attack speed. You clear off the other mods that you don't want, and then multi-mod for +2 and crit chance. The +2 is very useful for Awaken Cast on Crit. We get this to level 11 between the +3 from the Critical Strike Mastery, as well as +1 gems and +2 supports on the item. So very cool. A level 11 Awaken Cast on Crit is only 5% less spell damage and 38% increased CDR. So it doesn't take us much to get to that 52 breakpoint. We also get an Empower with +3 levels on it. Now, ultimately, I only finished with a level 2 Empower because I switched to this pretty late in the build. Now, if you get a level 4 here, that's going to be another 30% damage or something. The level damage on Hexblast is absolutely crazy. You can see here we have a level 28 that has 3,300 to 5,000 chaos damage. We also use the new Rain of Arrows of Saturation, which at level 26 with the 23 quality that we have here gets us 45 arrows. That's so many arrows. Now, there is a bit of a problem with this on single target, as you see, you get some that land on each other, but then it kind of goes out in a spiral. And for mapping, this is actually quite nice because you don't even really have to aim that much. You can just kind of attack and it'll spread out as you keep running. But on single target, it doesn't get nearly enough hits. And that's why I have a Blast Rain in here that I switch out. Blast Rain fires all of its projectiles in big AoEs on the target and they all hit. It's a way better single target multiplier, but for mapping, simulacrums, things like that, Rain of Arrows of Saturation is really cool. So for the rings, we got minus mana cost, some life, and some chaos res. Over here, we grabbed a fractured chaos damage leech ring. Now this base was, I think, maybe 30 or 40 C, and then I just spammed on it until I got something decent. We use the Hiri's Truth Amulet because we get Culling Strike from our bow attacks, which proc our cast on crit. It also gives us a massive precision. It's really big precision, helps us with accuracy and critical strike chance. And getting generic crit strike chance is important because we have to get our attack crit capped, as well as we want to get our spell crit as high as possible. On the quiver, there's not actually a lot that you need on the quiver. It's almost all suffixes, which kind of sucks. So you basically want life as a prefix, and then for suffixes, things like crit chance, attack speed. I found one that had the June mod of global crit chance and generic chaos damage if you've dealt a crit recently. Flat damage skills this build really well, so that was pretty nice. And then accuracy is important as well. The helmet, this is pretty cool tech. The trigger level 10 Void Gaze. This is 20% less chaos resistance for enemies, and this thing procs all the time. You can see the purple cone that fires out from you. That cone is Void Gaze. So I was just looking to get some more damage. Also, this is really good for ES. And getting an additional power charge on it was very cheap. The boots is where we get the rest of our CDR. This 14 gets us to the breakpoint, so you don't even need the elevated version. And then I got Tailwind for just more speed. That's always up because we're always dealing critical strikes. For the gloves, I was able to snipe these for, I think, a divine. The attack crit roll isn't great, and you can easily make up for that on other gear. But Shadows and Dust are awesome. Rampage is so much fun. These are not great for bossing, which is ultimately what I wanted to do with this build. And I just can't help myself. I'm a mapper at heart. So Despair on hit here, that's what allows our Hexblast to work. So the way Hexblast functions is it deals damage to an enemy. And if the enemy has a curse on them when it deals damage, it also deals AoE damage. So the way that cast on crit Hexblast works is your rain of arrows hits the target, it curses them, and then Hexblast is cast on that target. The target then has an AoE explosion around them and then takes damage themselves as well. So that's going off pretty much on all of your different arrows on all the different enemies around the screen. This was a way better mapper than I expected it to be. It wasn't, you know, a godly mapper, but it was a lot smoother because Rain of Arrows covers so much of the screen when you have this Rain of Arrows of saturation that it was actually quite nice to use. So this belt I bought for 1 divine without the third implicit, the Hunter % life. And I hit it with a Hunter's Exalted Orb and unfortunately hit tier 2 life, but still very good. And then I crafted on regen 150 ES per second. This is a very underrated mod. I was originally using this because I had Eldritch Battery, but I eventually dropped that. But I kept the mod because I have 600 ES, and this is just some life that I basically get back every second. Your ES pool now can act as a life pool, even though we don't have much leech. Let's talk about the Flas. We are using triple elemental Flas for damage mitigation. The idea is we take a huge chunk of our physical damage as elemental. So we have a Taste of Hate with a bunch of effect on it. So I think this gets up to close to 20% of phys taken as cold. And then we have 50% of physical damage from hits taken as lightning. So we are mitigating most of our physical damage through taking it as elemental. And then of course, these flasks take less damage of the elements as well, so you get a lot of tank from that. Of course, this also solves all of our resistances. Now, when you're sitting in the hideout, you don't have full uptime of all your flasks, but when you're fighting, you get things like Alchemist Genius, you get increased flash charges gained if you've dealt a crit recently from the notable, so you have very good uptime of these flasks. Now, the way I have it set up right now, the Taste of Hate every once in a while will drop off, and I should have fixed that. Say it just happened for a second, and that has gotten me killed. So just know, if you play this build, get a little bit more generation on your flask to ensure that your Taste of Hate is up full time. Minus mana cost is important because you're casting so many skills. So when that's up, your Rain of Arrows is only 3 mana. And then for just a 63 mana pool, we're able to cast all of our skills pretty much constantly. All right, let's talk about the gems. We talked about Hexblast. We're also using crit damage in here, critical strikes, Awaken cast on crit, Rain of Arrows, Awakened added chaos because huge damage effectiveness on Hexblast. In the helmet, we have Life Tap attached to Frenzy and Mana Forged Arrows. This setup is actually allowing us to generate power charges because we are using Inner Conviction on the tree. Inner Conviction gives you more spell damage per power charge, but it also allows you to gain power charges instead of Frenzy charges. So instead of needing a power charge on crit setup, we just run Frenzy. We also have a Frost Bomb here that I use on single targets that are getting too tanky. In the boots, we have Immortal Call, cast when damage taken, and also Void Sphere. Void Sphere is phenomenal on a cast when damage taken setup. You take a hit, it casts a Void Sphere on top of the enemy and pulls enemies towards it, and it keeps them all close together and away from you. I also use Blink Arrow for movement, and then we swap in this Frost Blink on Frost Bomb sometimes when I want an extra movement skill. Over here we have some auras. We have Grace, we have Zealotry, and Haste. I'm not using the regular Haste, just Vol Haste. I have that right here on my toolbar. And then we have our Goofy setup in our 6-link. So I decided I had all these extra gems. Let's try to use the new Spectres. And as you'll see, I don't have any alive because me and my mod were doing some testing in PvP and he killed them. But what I found is they actually stay up pretty well if you have Convocation on left click, and you can keep them out of danger for the most part. So Crouching Tuna has a pretty good video on this. Use Ray Spectre, Meat Shield, Minion Life, and Elemental Army. That setup allows your Spectres to stay up most of the time. I was running a Forest Warrior, which gives onslaught, and then I also had the perfect warlord, which gives endurance charges. It gives vitality, so everybody's healing, and they really do feel pretty nice to use. I also have a stone golem in here because I was running Animate Guardian, but he died and I didn't feel like remaking him, so I just threw in the stone golem for a little bit more life regen. And then convocation here in our last link. The specters are a lot of fun. I'm going to make use of more of them this league, and I'm looking forward to possibly playing a minion build. Okay, so let's talk about the tree, wrap this thing up. We are using the Militant Faith with reduced mana cost per devotion, as well as area damage. That gives us Inner Conviction. Now, to be honest, I should probably drop this and get Frenzy and Power Charges. The reason I was running this is because I had Eldritch Battery, and with Eldritch Battery, I wasn't able to run a Mana Forge setup. So, in reality, I should drop this and generate both Frenzy and Power Charges. And if you make this build, definitely do that. Just add a Power Charge on crit to your Mana Forge setup. Like I said at the beginning, there are a lot of ways to iterate on this to make this build better. Ultimately, I played this for a while. I made so many changes, and I didn't have access to PoE for most of it. And I'm pretty much just done working on it. I don't feel like improving it anymore. So of course I make a video for all my builds, so don't play this exactly as is, but you can use this as a template because Hexblast cast on crit actually feels really good to use. So we get Power Charges over here. This is a really nice mastery, +1 chaos skills. We don't use chaos skills outside of Withering Step from time to time, so you don't really ever lose life in ES, which means you just get free +1 for your Hexblast. We're doing some cluster stuff up here. Our large has Unwaveringly Evil for some chaos damage, attack speed and chaos damage here. Quick Getaway for attack speed and crit chance, and pressure points for crit chance and double damage. Spike Concoction is super nice. Alchemist Genius gives you flash charges and effective Flas when you use a Flas, which is all the time. And Special Reserve is just a little bit of life regen and damage. You get a lot of jewels in this build. I didn't get great jewels. I just wanted to grab attack speed, life, and then a third mod that gave me something. So this Watcher's Eye is crazy. I stole this. I think I paid 5 divines for it, and it's got perfect life on hit. It's got evade while affected by grace, and effects of consecrated ground. You create linger for 2 seconds. So you're constantly creating consecrated ground with zealotry, and then those things, the effects of them stay for 2 extra seconds, giving you much, much better uptime. This is an absolute steal. You're not going to find this jewel, but I did have this jewel without affected by grace, and I think I paid a divine for it. So nothing too interesting on the tree otherwise. The Flash stuff, life, I'm taking as much spell suppress as I can grab. And for our Wildwood Ascendancy, we are using the Primalist. The backpack, I love this thing. I absolutely love this thing. I don't know how I'm ever going to play without it, if I want to play with a tincture or something, but super, super nice. And then after that, charms are unbelievably powerful. So this one gives us crit chance while at maximum power charges, which I actually have on all 3. This means as soon as we get to max power, we have over 2 flat crit from these 3 mods. That works for our spells and for our attacks. I think any cast on crit build is going to love that additional crit. And then the other mods that we have are just nice to haves. So recover 5% of life when you use a flask. That stacks with the 4% from the mastery. So that means every time we hit a flask, we get 9% life back. There are times where I was getting absolutely mangled by a pack of enemies, and I was just spamming my flasks and surviving through it. This one says remove bleeding when you use a flask. So between corrupted blood and this, because our flasks are always going off, we are fully bleed immune. And then we have 7% chance to blind on hit. We hit so much and so often that this is going to be blinding all the enemies on the screen. So that's going to be it from me. Not my favorite build ever. I don't love bow cast on crit, but this was pretty good for what I put into it, using 1C items like Shadows and Dust and Hiri's Amulet. All in all, I wouldn't ultimately recommend to play this build as is, but definitely if you are interested in bow cast on crit, Hexblast is fun, and you could use this as a template to iterate on. I simply just kind of ran out of energy for the bow cast on crit playstyle, and I was ready to move on to one of the many, many ideas that I have for new gems. I'm super excited. Our next build is going to be a Locust Miner that is awesome, I think. I haven't really played it yet. but I'm super excited about it. We've already done some testing on stream. So stop by today and say hi at twitch.tv/AER0___. And you can check out the new stuff that we're working on over there. Hi, Kyra. If you want to support me, you can like this video, comment, or subscribe. And I'll see you over at my Twitch. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate each and every single one of you. And as always, take care.